Okay. Finally got some of the mountain of laundry down to like a reasonable. We can finally see out of the windows in the laundry room.
Yes, we are leaving for a 10-day trip tomorrow, hence why we need to do laundry. It's very important.
Well, laundry, I think, takes much longer than I ever realized.
I think a lot in life takes longer than you realize. Not that that's a burden, but I think...
Wow.
I think it does. I think that's for all of us. It's not just you. I think both of us.
It's been pointed out to me several times by our friends that I go super slow when I'm cooking or like making something. I don't know why. I just enter this state of just nothing else matters, and I'm just really enjoying what I'm doing.
Think you're
and
in a
I'm
state of zen
not
or
rushing
something, you know?
Yeah, maybe.
Nothing wrong with that.
Maybe we'll go with that instead of me just being slow.
It's just sometimes when we're trying to get out of the house, for example, both of us think we're faster than we actually are.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I know that about me.
Which is a real problem.
Yeah. And I know that about you too.
And we always run about 5 minutes late. Our friends who know us know that we're always like, hey, we're a few minutes behind.
Yeah. But the few times that I have been on time to something, the other person was late. So
it balances each other out.
Yeah. I do try to be on time though. That's the thing. I don't like when people resign to the fact that they're going to be late. Every time I am trying to be on time, I'm just consistently failing.
Yeah, I don't know that I'm trying to be on time.
No, you I don't think you don't have the hope of being on time. That's the difference between us. That's why, because we both end up getting out of the house at the same time. We're both basically ready to go at the same time, but I blame it on you because at least I was bringing positive energy to it.
You were trying. You thought we're going to get out on time. I wasn't even planning for that. I was just kind of like, this is when I want to wake up. I know we need to get out, but I'm going to take the amount of time I'm going to take.
Yeah. Wow.
Oops.
It says a lot about you.
Does it?
Yeah. And then
probably work on that.
Laundry today is big because it does take a long time. And we have a lot to wash. It's ridiculous how many clothes we have.
I know, just
how much clothes.
How is that possible?
But that's what I was thinking. Like most of our friends have multiple kids.
Yeah.
The laundry room must just be constant chaos because it's constant chaos in our house and there's just the two of us. It's bizarre. But you were doing a lot of laundry today. You were washing a lot of new clothes today.
Yeah. Summer looks, baby.
Yeah.
2024 summer looks.
So you just went to the store yesterday.
Yeah.
You came home with probably 10 pieces, something like that?
Something like that. Yeah. Shirts.
Mostly off the discount rack.
Of all colors and shapes and sizes, really.
Yeah. So
keep it fresh.
Yeah.
Keep it interesting.
And I think you washing them, not that it surprised me, but I did ask you. I went, are you going to wash all those? Because we're leaving tomorrow for a long trip. And so we're just packing kind of frantically. That's why we're doing so much laundry, is to get everything packed. And I asked you, like, are you going to wash everything? And you're like, it's not even a question, of course.
Never a question.
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to wash it.
And you'd think it would be the same for me, but for some reason it's not.
I don't understand.
I'm okay with not washing something before I wear it, for the most part. There are exceptions.
It doesn't make you itchy? Like it doesn't feel weird on your skin?
Maybe, I need to pay more attention to that.
Like the factory ick is still on it, you know what I mean?
I need to pay more attention to that in the future. But I can tell you why I do it. For some reason, it feels like I'm banking a free wear. Not banking it, I'm using a free wear. Like before I wash it,
I don't understand that.
I'm getting one free usage of it. Just came from the store.
Like in its perfect condition?
Yeah, sort of.
Store ready condition.
Sort of. Yeah. And some things actually look better once they've been washed, but I see it as I get one free wear before I start washing it, and it becomes like just part of my clothes.
Very interesting way of thinking about it.
Sense.
I don't understand it, but it's okay.
I know.
We all think about things differently.
Even as I'm saying it, I know it's ridiculous and it makes no sense.
It's okay. But it's all right. Okay.
Anyway,
what are we talking about today?
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. We're talking about, thanks for bearing with us is what I meant to say. We're talking about something greater. So let's get into it. And then our theme music will play. You know?
Yeah, that's good.
Do you think at all when you think about it that it was like the first song you wrote kind of after the lockdown pandemic period?
Oh yeah. I mean, every time I hear it, I think about that.
Really?
I mean, that's a good place to start, actually, to give people context, and even for me to remember and remind myself, like, this was the first song that I wrote after the pandemic, like after the lockdown. I think we wrote it in like January of 2021. So I think I had written maybe with people via Zoom before that, but it was the first time that I was in person with two other writers. And this was the one that we kind of came up with. And I kind of love that because the theme of it is so hope-filled and faith-filled.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before. It feels like the most faith-filled song on the record.
Yeah.
Which is just ironic from where it came from, you know?
Right. In January of 2021, our household was not buzzing with hope and faith, really.
No, we had just walked through such a crazy season. Sometimes when I think back on that, I mean, I know everyone was affected by COVID in their own ways, and it was hard or good for some people. And I mean, it's just complicated. It was a complicated time, but we all have this shared experience, right, that we walked through. And for us, it was just such a trying time, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're right to say it affected everyone, but it also affected everyone differently.
Yeah.
In our community of traveling musician, public speaker, entertainment, whether you're in lighting or production or whatever. Some of our good friends are tour managers, you know what I mean? But all of us were impacted.
Yeah.
And so because that industry of live events, of public gatherings basically shut down for like a year. So that just brought with it all kinds of really, really difficult things, both from like a identity standpoint, just from like a sanity perspective of having nothing to do really, you know, for financially, all those things. It just was a trying time.
Everything being up in the air all at once.
So anyway, not to dwell on that. Everybody knows all about that. But that was a difficult time. So you wrote this kind of in the midst of that, which like you said, is interesting given the fact that this is easily the song on the record that's a proclamation of faith. It's like a declaration of faith.
Totally. Yeah.
That's also why I love it though.
As Christians, it can feel, and maybe for me at least, now I'm 37 years into practicing the faith, and sometimes like declaring faith, declaring something like this song feels maybe a little bit trite, or like I've done it my whole life. So it can feel like I'm just kind of going through the motions. It can feel like it lacks a certain level of, do I actually believe this? You know what I mean? Like when you're just kind of going through the motions of just being a Christian and trying to believe. It's hard to describe.
You can say it without really thinking about what you're saying.
Right.
Saying it is so natural and normal. You've been saying something like it for so long that you get to the point where you can say things without really having a connection to what you're saying.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. That's why this song is really powerful for me, is because it's not just saying it for me. I had to, in the midst of that time, both of us, I think, but me especially, ask myself, do I actually believe?
Yeah.
Do I actually believe what I preach? What I say from stage all the time? Trust in God. God's working behind the scenes. God's at work for your greatest good. All of these things that I just preached my whole life and believed my whole life. But like when rubber hits the road, when you come face to face with a wall that feels insurmountable, like, do you actually believe?
Right.
Do you actually believe?
Right.
And this is one of those songs that it's like, what's the lyric in the chorus? This is my song, and I'm asking you. I might not have eyes to see it, but give me the faith to believe it. Like that idea of, I don't have eyes to see it right now, but help me believe. Help me have faith. Give me the gift of faith to believe it.
Right.
Because sometimes we don't have the gift of faith in a moment like that, you know?
Yeah. And it's really difficult to see the things that we used to see clearly. You know what I mean? If the clouds settle in and you're like, man, I really thought we were on the same page. I felt like I kind of sort of knew where this thing was going. And now I'm like, holy smokes, I don't even see a path through this, you know? Yeah. You reminded me of a quote from C.S. Lewis. To love involves trusting the beloved. To love involves trusting the person you love beyond the evidence. Right? And I think the way he says it is beyond the evidence and even against much evidence. So that's really interesting. Well, we'll just say, you know, you can develop a pattern of trusting God, of relying on him and seeing him come through for you. And for a lot of us who have been walking with God for a while, that's something that has sustained us, leaning on him and seeing him come through. You know what I mean?
Totally.
There are days where that makes much more sense to me than than someone asks me what do I believe? There are days I'm really not in a good place to debate and discuss theology or, historical accuracy of X, Y, or Z. There are just times when I just know that time and time again, I have reached out to God and I feel that he has met me, and I have leaned on him and I feel that he has caught me. You know what I mean? It's just happened so many times that I started to just operate in that place of trust. And then for me, the pandemic was a time where the clouds really settled in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am not seeing the providence and the faithfulness. And so I like that C.S. Lewis quote, just to love involves trusting when there's really not much evidence to speak of.
Yeah. To choose love, to choose faith in the midst of those times. Yeah. That is what love is choosing despite what the circumstances of life are in that moment, right?
Yeah.
It makes me think about just recently I didn't even tell you this the other day. I was just really struggling. We're in a season right now of just a lot of new across the board in multiple areas of our life. And I feel like sometimes with new comes anxiety for me because I like to be in control. And when I don't really know what's going to happen, it's anxiety inducing for me. And so like we're talking about with COVID, it was prime time for that anxiety to be on high alert. But then even this past week, just walking through something new, I found myself really struggling and just having a lot of anxiety. And so I spent some time journaling because, as you know, that's what kind of settles me a lot of times, and is just getting it out of my brain and getting it onto a page, because that's how I process, is through the page. And so I just sat there. For some reason, I felt this prompting to just write out the words of the beginning of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And I wrote it out 5 or 6 times, and I would write it out slowly, and I would just focus on different parts of that verse. It makes me emotional thinking about it because I needed to remember in that moment, the Lord is my shepherd. He is my shepherd. He's the one that's leading. Just like the song says, there's a light at the end of this tunnel. And I want to believe that. I'm not the one in control. I'm not the one that's leading this ship. And I'm okay with that. Ultimately, I'm okay with that, but I need to be reminded of it. It's almost like reciting truth over yourself. This is a song of proclaiming truth over yourself. The same is true for scripture, or anytime that I sit down and journal, it's an opportunity to do that and to rest in and reroot yourself in the truth.
Yeah.
So it's just something that helped me recently that I just want to be reminded of. When I'm in the midst of a storm, that's what I can do. It's just steady myself in the truth again, even when, again, life is throwing things my way that feel like evidence to the contrary. God is faithful, and reminding myself of that, rooting myself in that truth has been really crucial for me, you know?
It reminds me of something that you showed me on Instagram a couple days ago.
Yeah.
A video by Scott the Painter. That's his Instagram handle. So I'd never seen him before, but he had this video on Instagram. He was talking about, I won't even try to sum up what he said. I'll butcher it, but I'll just tell you what I got from it, because there was a part where he was talking about being an entrepreneur and that it can be easy to stress about what's next, because it kind of always feels like after the thing you're working on, is there going to be something else down the road for you to do? And it can be kind of hard to see what's the 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 30-year roadmap, and there's just a lot of stresses that come with being an entrepreneur. But he was talking about the anxiety that can come from trying to map it all out. And you think, okay, well, I know where I want to be 30 years from now. So is what I'm doing today helping me get there? Yes or no? And then if it's not, you're crippled by whatever that means. And, and he talked about he's seeing this 30-year Jenga tower of his life and of his plans kind of collapsing. At least that's what I took from it. And then there was this line where he said, we can plan, we can do all that kind of stuff, but you're not in charge of surprise. You're not responsible for surprise.
Yeah, that's the part that got me.
Yeah. And it was just so great because first of all, just by its definition, right? Surprise. If we know about it, if we're planning it, it's not a surprise.
But how often do we just want to know?
Yeah, we want to know what's coming down the road. But the beautiful thing is life has a way of just surprising us with sometimes things that are like unhappy surprises for sure.
Yeah.
Curveballs, but other times where it's just like these wonderful little surprises or these opportunities or these things that we didn't see coming. They weren't on our plan. We probably wouldn't even have planned them even if we could have.
Yeah.
And we end up growing from them and loving them and learning from them, and our lives change for the better because of them. And we're not responsible for that. Like, I think all of us, you could call it fate or the universe or Mother Nature or God, whatever. But I think all of us, if we're really open to it, kind of experience, it seems to be these little surprises that happen in life. Yeah. Maybe it's just the random chance of it all. But either way, these surprises that are flying around, every once in a while, one of them lands in our life.
Yeah.
And from my point of view, it's just a cool thing that God does. And we're not responsible for that. So that's difficult for somebody like myself, who's an entrepreneur and who's really driven and wants to have a plan and has certain outcomes that I would really like to see happen. And I want to understand like the steps I have to take to get there.
Yeah.
It's kind of difficult, but also it's a relief to just go, I'm not in charge of the surprises.
Right.
Like I can have a plan, but chances are there's going to be things I don't even see coming that are going to play a huge role in how I'm doing and what I'm doing in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
That you can't see, you can't plan for. I know. This is something that's really helpful for me. A tool that's helpful for me in my own faith life is looking back, remembering. And I think that's a gift of age, maybe, being in your 30s and having like a lot of life that you've lived. Well, a lot. I mean, it's all relative, right?
Sure.
Some older people that are listening are like, oh, wait till you're 50 or whatever. But I do feel like in my 30s, I've had this gift of like, being able to look back on my life and all of these different moments where God showed up in a way that was completely unexpected or opened a door that I could not have ever planned for, that just opened because he wanted it to. And I was invited to walk through, and all of these little things, even our relationship, like I never planned for our relationship. We were friends to begin with, and I could never have thought or planned for or expected our friendship starting when we were high schoolers was going to lead to this beautiful marriage that we've had for 8 years and traveling in ministry across the world. And I mean, even when we got married, we couldn't have planned for all the things that we've done in our 8 years of marriage. And so like that helps me in the present moment to remind myself, you have no idea what's just around the corner.
Right.
You have no idea.
In our 8 years of marriage, if we were to think of like the highlights, if we had to do like an 8-year recap and think of the highlights, very few of them would be things that we had planned, right?
Yeah.
Very few of them would be something that we would have written down on our wedding day as something we wanted to do.
It's so true.
So
yeah,
just you're not in charge of surprises,
No. Which ultimately reminds me of, I don't know if this was a saint quote, a pope quote, something that someone said that I read once, but it was something about that Christian hope isn't in an outcome, it's in a person. The idea that our hope is not in how something turns out. Our hope is not in if God answers this prayer or not. Our hope is in Jesus Christ, who says to us, you're never alone. I'm always with you. That's what our hope is in, that we're never alone, and that he's a God of surprise and a God of providence and a God of faithfulness, that he continues to show up in our life over and over again. Like that is the hope that we can cling to.
Right.
And that is really settling and freeing. It's not tied to an outcome.
Right.
It's tied to a person.
Right. So if I'm working on something or if I have a certain goal, it's helpful for me to stop and remind myself, hey, if in 5 years, if in 10 years, A, B, or C doesn't happen, God is still good.
Yeah.
And God is still alive and he's still at work and he still loves you. Sometimes I just remind myself of those things because I do believe that. And it's helpful for me to go, yeah, like just like you said, it's not the outcome.
Yeah.
The outcome is not the reason I celebrate. It's not the reason I believe. You don't just like pay into like the God piggy bank and then you get a reward every 8 months or every 8 years or whatever.
No.
It's not really like that. So we are just choosing to believe that he's good and that he's for us. And it's worth, I think, the difficult work of removing your attachment to the outcomes in order for you to feel like, God is good, God is faithful.
Yeah, it's a dangerous place to be because there are going to be many, many more prayers unanswered than answered, It
seems that way to me, especially if you ask for things at the rate that I do, I mean, statistically, he can't address all these,
He just gets it to it all.
And he's
too much.
Yeah, and he loves us too much to staff it out. He wants to take each one of them directly. So yeah, but that does cause a backlog. Yeah, and the funny thing about it is like, again, I don't always know how to explain it. I'm not always ready to articulate it. I know we've talked about that line from St. Peter, always be prepared to give a reason to anyone who asks the reason for your hope. I try to always have on my mind the reasons why I believe and the reasons why I hope. And sometimes it is difficult to explain, but I just know that in my life, it's better when I believe.
Things go better. I'm a better person.
Yeah. Introducing the way of Jesus to my life and to my behaviors, it has been beneficial.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like a fruit thing. Like the fruit is sort of undeniable.
Yeah.
Not that everything's perfect once I started to believe, far from it. My life has fallen apart in so many ways since I started this journey being a believer. But I just know that when I close my eyes and try to connect myself to God, it's been good for me. It's been a healthy practice for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And believing in him I think it's more than just a psychological effect. It really has kind of changed me. But believing in the fact that he's working for me has helped me to have less anxiety. And I've noticed that in times when I do have a lot of anxiety, which over the last few years, I've had more than I've ever had in my life. I totally just lost track of the trusting that God was working. I just completely lost sight of that.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of asking myself and asking God, asking you, I'm like, hey, what changed here? I used to be so optimistic and positive and joyful. It's like I wasn't stressed about the future. I wasn't stressed about the end of the year figures and what they were going to be. I wasn't bothered by that stuff,
Yeah.
Trusting that God is going to come through, just like do it every once in a while, man. It's kind of the best part about being a Christian.
Yeah. Well, it's like a muscle that has to be exercised and strengthened, right? Like it's in a lot of ways it's trust or surrender or faith is something that you have to literally put in the time and show up and say yes.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
What's the phrase? You stop it, you lose it.
Use it or lose it.
Use it or lose it. Use it or lose it, literally.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
interesting, yeah.
If you're out of the practice of trusting in God, which I've definitely been there in the last couple of years myself, like I don't even know what did it, just acting on my own accord and thinking that I was in charge or whatever, life just does that sometimes. And I started losing it. It's like I lost the plot a little bit and it doesn't go well.
Yeah. And like you said, the more you practice it, the better you get at trusting God and the more natural it becomes to really just live your life in openness and in abandonment and in trust. Abandonment to like your own way of doing it or in this like death grip on these certain outcomes that you want, Genuinely, it's one of the best parts about being a Christian is being able to throw up your hands and go, hey, I'm going to work hard, but when my head hits the pillow, I'm going to just leave it up to God and surrender it and be positive and optimistic going into the next day, knowing that, believing that the God of the universe, the one who holds all of this together, the one who breathes his life into us, he is at work, he is good, he is for me.
Yeah.
Again, these are things that we just say in like church language, but really, really enjoying that a little bit is like, being a Christian is freaking hard. You know what I mean? Like the way of Jesus, walking the way of Jesus is difficult. I mean,
we got to take the wins where we can.
Take the freaking vacation. Sometimes he tries to give you a nice cold drink on a hot day.
Yeah, he's like, listen, give me the burdens.
Yeah.
Give me the anxiety. Let me take it on.
Right.
Like,
and we're all walking around with our shoulders up to here and we're like
me
tense.
Especially.
And it's just like, let yourself sometimes enjoy the providence of God and the goodness of God. Even if you don't see the evidence like right in front of you, let yourself just enjoy an afternoon of going, I'm not going to stress about it because I believe he's at work. Because this is the thing, if you're listening and you're anything like me, being a Christian is difficult.
Yeah.
There are many times my Christianity can be an uphill battle. Literally, my faith is a struggle, not always to believe in God.
Yeah.
Although that sometimes that too, but to practice
it is.
It's hard to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
It's hard to ask for forgiveness when you know you've wronged. It's hard to forgive. It's hard to forgive when someone has really hurt you or betrayed you or whatever. There's so many things in the world like that, like my flesh desires that I have to remind myself, no, that's not what God's calling me to. You can't pursue just worldly power. It clearly doesn't make people happy. You can't just pursue money. It clearly isn't the answer to everything. You know what I mean? Like,
it's a constant temptation.
Yeah.
Constantly.
So sometimes my faith is like I'm me walking by the window of a bakery and just
French
seeing
bakery,
all the
somewhere
gorgeous,
in the middle of France, something gorgeous, croissants,
or anywhere in Europe. I'll accept anywhere, and you just see everything in the window, and it's just me being like, oh, but I'm on a diet. I'm really not supposed to. It's summertime, and it's just like that. Sometimes is what my faith feels like. Is like I'm just resisting all these things I would otherwise do and if I wasn't trying to commit myself to the way of Jesus. So it's hard. It's an uphill battle sometimes.
Yeah.
So why not, when given the opportunity to just go, I'm just going to lay my anxieties down and just try to trust him every once in a while.
Yeah.
I think it's nice. It's one of the best things about being a Christian, because there are some times where I would otherwise be super anxious about something, and I just go, you know what? God's got this. Like I'm giving it my best. I'm trying to be shrewd. I'm trying to be attentive to the details, but at the end of the day, I got to believe that God's got this,
Yep. That's good.
It's freaking nice, man. I got to say, it's one of the big perks.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, it's not easy to do. I'll say that.
No, of course.
It's not easy to do, but I agree with you. It's like, take that opportunity, as often as we can, even when you don't believe it.
Right.
Not to go back to the song, but that's what the song is about.
I was just going to say,
even when
that's why I like the song.
Believe these words.
Yes.
Even when I'm struggling to hear you, to feel you, God, like I'm going to surrender to you in this moment because ultimately I know that you've got it.
Right. Please give me the faith to believe that.
Yeah.
Right.
Amen.
That's why I love the song. Hey, before we sign off, anything about Something Greater from we haven't really played it live, so you wouldn't have any live stories
Not yet, but I'm super pumped to play it
although
live.
We're playing it tomorrow.
Yeah. Hope it goes well.
Yeah, right. Anything else about you've already mentioned the line from the chorus that you like. Anything about the writing or the production or anything?
The production on this was really, I don't even know if this is the right term. I'm terrible at terms sometimes, as you know. Rough and ready, is that like, it was kind of like raw. It was a raw experience. Kason Cooley produced this by himself. And so it was just kind of like, let's get in the studio. It took us a handful of days, whereas with the other songs on the record, it took us like weeks, to nail them down. This one, it was just kind of like, let's see what happens and just kind of go with the flow, see what's inspiring us. And we just kind of like took it by the reins and ran with it.
Yeah, just you and Kason in the studio, just kind of going for it.
And he played most of the instruments on it. And then Aaron Sterling played drums on it, which was super cool.
Nice.
To have him on it. He's so good. And it was just like, yeah, let's go with it and just feel out what the vibe is and commit to the vibe.
By contrast, a lot of the other songs, it seems like you took a lot more time with, tried a lot more different things,
which is cool.
Totally. Cool. No, it's not that one's better than the other.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make sense of it. So some of them were taking you weeks.
Yeah.
You were, hey, we're not really sure. Let's sleep on it. Come back to tomorrow. Whereas it seems like Something Greater. You just kind of, you felt what was right pretty quickly, picked the target, felt like you were dialed in on it and just kind of executed.
Yeah, we tried really hard to not overthink it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There were even times in the mixing phase when Kason was like, did we spend enough time on this? Like, are we sure that we feel good about this? And I was like, yes, just keep going with it, because I feel like it's just, we created a really cool vibe with it. And I'm really proud and happy about how it came out. Yeah,
cool. Well, I love the song. I I hope everybody else does too.
Same.
You can hear it wherever you listen to music. You can probably hear it wherever you're listening to this podcast. Can you comment on podcasts?
Maybe probably not. So
after you comment on this saying, wow, best episode ever.
Especially the part about laundry.
Yeah, right.
Riveting. Really riveting.
Anyway, after you do that, go check it out. Go listen to the song Something Greater.
Yeah, and take a moment today to do what we said. Just give your trust to God.
Amen.